you all have great success stories. And so that's why we created these TIA Talk opportunities, where members can share their experiences with other members. And this morning, we're very lucky to have our new chairman, Jeff Tucker, and his brother Jim of Tucker Company, to share their experience of growing up in the business, growing up together, and now running a business and moving from sibling rivalry to sibling partnership. Their father, Bill, was one of those 14 people with one of those original 14 licenses that was at the organizing meeting in 1978 that created our predecessor organization that became TIA. So I'm really excited to introduce Jeff and Jim Tucker to come out and share their story.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning. I'm Jeff Tucker, and I just couldn't be more proud and honored to be your new chairperson. This is my brother Jim. Together, we own and operate Tucker Company worldwide. So, by show of hands, who in the audience works at a family-owned business? Okay, a little more than half the room. Now, everybody who didn't raise their hand, who admits, from time to time, enjoying some good reality TV? Come on, don't be shy. A few more. Good. Well, there should be something here for all of you that didn't admit it, for everybody.
Transitioning a family business can be torture. Transitioning the ownership of a family business, not an easy thing to do. Before you ever get to the day, the big day where the stock transfers hands, if you ever get that far, you've experienced years of lessons, tough love, pain and suffering, and growth. Stuff that makes the transition day, the big day, pale in comparison. To get there requires lots of transitions. We transitioned, Jim and I, from student to professional. We transitioned the relationships too. A relationship between father and son became employer-employee. Jim and I went from brothers to colleagues to partners. Folks, that ain't easy stuff. Staff's got a stake in this thing too, right? In our case, most of our staff knew us from this tall. Now they're our managers. And God bless them, you know they're thinking, damn, this little shit is going to be my boss one day. I have a question for you. How many of you know what happens overwhelmingly to third-generation family businesses? Show of hands. Want to guess? They fail. They disappear. 90% of the time, 9 out of 10, third-generation family businesses don't survive. So you make it through all that, right? We haven't even talked about the customers, the carriers, the banks, the other stakeholders. Everyone is looking at you through a microscope.
So there you have it. We were the curse. The curse of the third generation. Not only did we have to survive the transition, but the company had to survive us. Brief history on Tucker. We were founded in 1961 by our grandfather Jacob, who discovered a niche business rather late in his life. 10 years later, he passed away unexpectedly, dropped dead of a heart attack. Our father, Bill Tucker, never worked a day in his life for Jake. Ends up buying the business a few months after. Bill never had any experience in the transportation industry either. For the next 32 years, he immersed himself into the business and into the industry. As co-founder of TIA back in 1978, he helped shepherd this fledgling industry. and helped shape it into what it is today. Now, by show of hands, how many people were here for the very first TIA conference back in 1978? One hand, two hands. 3 and 4. True, I was 7 years old. Jeff was 10 years old. But we were here. By the way, in case you didn't know, he's the older brother. He's bigger, has less hair, you probably guessed it. So, we worked for our father for over 10 years. And we knew growing up as his sons, watching him in the business, working for him in the business, and watching him all these years at these TIA conferences, we knew the huge, immense shoes we had to fill if we were going to make this transition successful.
Yet still we started at the bottom. Our first joint venture together started when I was in 8th grade, Jim was in 6th. It was called J&J Janitorial Services. We only had one customer. Every weekend, Dad would take us to the office and we'd clean everything, including the toilets.
For me, the toilets weren't the worst part. Hard to imagine. It was the desks. And it wasn't the coffee rings or the cigarette ashes all over the place, and not even the phone jam. That black, grimy stuff. What is that? And why did they make phones in those days white? I digress. No, it wasn't the toilets. It was cleaning the desks. It was the papers on the desks. On those papers were tons of scary things, like weight, pieces, dimensions, times, dates, and really scary phrases like drop dead date, must deliver by, and names and phone numbers of companies. People who were depending on my dad and his company to come through for them. And here I am at 14 years old, looking down at these papers. They weren't papers to me. It was my future. And I'm wondering, could I do this job? Would I enjoy it? Would I be good at it? Pretty difficult thing for a 14-year-old to be processing.
J&J Janitorial did offer us our first lessons in transitions, right? We went from kids to kids with responsibility. It was the first time also we recognized that customers could somehow depend on us to do a good job. Neither of us expected to join the business. In fact, Dad would always tell us, look, after you go to college, you get a job. If you still want to come see about working for the business will be here, we'll talk. Then, in my junior year in college, he decides he's got a 5-year plan for retirement.
Yeah, and I'm a freshman, by the way. That was 1989, and I hear this news. And I say to myself, WTF, you've got to be kidding me. Let me get this straight. The year I graduate, the old man retires, and this guy's got 2 years' experience on me. But you know what? I knew one thing. Had to get out of college in 4 years or less and get to work. And you know what? I said to myself, why not? This company was responsible for everything I had in my life up to that point, including the college I was about to attend.
So my first day after college, summer 1991, I moved back home. We both come down, we have breakfast together, we kiss Mom goodbye, drive to work separately. I show up, walk into Dad's office. He says, look, Jeff, I see you in sales one day, but if you're going to be in sales for the company, you've got to understand how the business works. So he says, look, you're going to spend 2-3 years in operations. After that, Irv, who was our VP of sales at the time, Irv's going to teach you sales. So I'm saying, okay, great. I'm loving it. It's easier than college. I'm getting paid for it. I'm booking loads. I'm making carrier friends, customer friends. Life is good. 8 months in, boom, Irv, that guy who was supposed to train me, quits. 2 weeks later, another sales rep quits. I say, Dad comes to us and says, look, we're going to be hiring sales reps. I don't know how long this is going to take. I said, look, Dad, I'm already on payroll. Business isn't great right now. You were going to put me in the field anyway. Why not now? He says, well, who's going to train you? I said, you. So a week later, I was calling on customers in New York City, North Jersey, Lower Connecticut, and I had success. I resurrected a lot of accounts. I brought on a lot of new business. I went through 3 major transitions at that point in my life. First of all, I earned my dad's respect because I stepped up, took responsibility. Second of all, obviously I moved from operations to sales. That was a big deal. But probably most important was that I earned the respect of staff. We needed business, and I was bringing it in.
June 1993, a few weeks after graduating college, I sit with my dad. Jim, Bernadette is going out on maternity leave almost any day, and you're going to be filling her desk while she's out. Geez, Dad, isn't Bernadette the one that handles our biggest account, quarter of our business? She's the one that covers all those flatbed heavy haul and overdimensional loads, you know, the tough stuff. And isn't that customer the grumpy guy that's always yelling at everybody? You're going to put me in? Okay. Well, as it turns out, he was throwing me into the deep end, and I floated quite well. Not only did the customer like dealing with me, so did the carriers. And for me personally, I finally got to answer the question that had been nagging me since I was 14 years old. And I found that not only could I hack it, I was good at it, and I enjoyed it. So for me, that was a major transition for myself, the staff around me, transitioning myself to professional. Now, there was another transition I was making from child to independent adult. Now, I don't know about other 20-year-olds, but as a young man in his early 20s, the last place I wanted to be was under the thumb of my father. I was living with him, and he was my boss. He was boss dad. And what's worse, he was a workaholic. He didn't know boundaries. So there were times where he would invade my personal space, such as the time he knocked on my bedroom door at 8 o'clock at night. My bedroom door, the one place of salvage. Jim, you got a minute? Sure, Dad. What's on your mind? Look, you're doing great in operations, but I need you to go out on the road in sales. Now, why we couldn't have that conversation 3 hours earlier or 12 hours later, I'll never know. Besides, Jeff was in sales, I was in operations. And there were other times, needless to say, I went out in sales. There were other times where he'd stop me on the way into the shower. It was bad enough running into your dad on the way to the shower, but you're also running into your boss on the way to the shower on a work day, 7 a.m. So, Jim, where are you headed today? Baltimore. Baltimore? You should have left a half an hour ago. And then maybe later that night, maybe another night, they all run together. So, Jim, which customers did you see today? That stuff drove me crazy. And I knew one thing. I needed to move out and fast.
I can't tell you how many times I had my resume out on the street during the 12 years I worked there under my dad. In fact, I guess as a way of coping, I developed a little list, which I happen to bring with me today. I called the list grievances. I'll read you just a couple. Grievance 13, Dad, I'm going to put a little 20-year-old emotion, immature kid tone here, okay? Dad, you're always so positive. You're whistling, you're smiling. We need more freight. If you don't look concerned, no one's going to work hard. Grievance 15. Don't tell me I exercise too much in the morning. I'm here every day. I'm on time. And no, I don't think I spend too much time exercising and not enough time working. Who did the run this morning? Anyone? See, I don't know what he's talking about with that one. Grievance 23. Oh, yes, there is such a thing as a snow day when you live in Center City, Philadelphia, and your car's plowed in by 5 foot of snow. So this list wasn't just me blowing off steam. It was, for sure. But it was also a way of coping and understanding lessons in leadership, lessons in responsibility. You know, there's a piece of transition that we haven't spoke about, and that's the piece that involves the actual transition of the business, the financial planning, the legal side of that. And credit to Dad, he was on top of that. He read volumes on the subject and surrounded us with experts.
Jeff and I both got our MBAs at night while we were working full-time for the company. Jeff concentrated in logistics and marketing, me in finance. We formed a transition team, state tax attorneys, CPAs, financial advisors, and more. We joined the Temple University Family Business Alliance, where we got to network with other family businesses working through the same issues. And we did something else, something that was very difficult. We went to therapy. Once a week, about hour and a half session, we'd all get in a car, drive together for 45 minutes to these sessions to visit with a therapist, a shrink. And in those sessions, we dug deep into years of family baggage, father-son stuff, brother stuff. I don't know how many of you have actually been to therapy with your business partners or with your family.
There's one.
Yeah.
One.
Those that know it's awkward. It's uncomfortable. As difficult as that process was, and Jeff and I are in complete agreement, we would never want to have to go through that again. We recognize, had it not been for those therapy sessions, we may not have survived as a family and as a business.
I think that the secret ingredient that has fueled our partnership, our successful partnership, Jim and I, is that we share a passion for the business. We share a passion for this industry. And we recognize and don't compete with the fact that he has skills and interests that complement mine. That's important. Also, personal lives intersect. We have similar friends. We went to the same universities. It gets a little weirder. In 1996, I introduced Jim to his wife, Joan. About a year and a half later, they returned that favor and introduced me to my wife, Heather, sitting right here. So by the time we got to that big day, the big day that stock transferred, ownership transferred, we knew we'd make it because we had been through thousands of transitions along the way, hard-fought lessons, and have established a sense of trust for one another.
Our first 5 years of control from our dad, we posted more revenues than the company did in the previous 42 years combined. 2008, that being the 5th year, was a banner year, best year. And we both remember vividly standing in front of our team at the holiday party that year, thanking every single person on staff for making 2008 such a great year. We knew we had tough times ahead of us in 2009. And in 2009, they were tough. We tanked. Literally overnight, a third of our business evaporated.
Now, remember, no manager alive had managed through the Great Depression, right? No lessons to be learned. No one knew how deep this Great Recession was going to be. No one knew how long it was going to be. So in January of 2009, Jim and I had days upon days of meetings talking about cost cutting. We made a decision. We called everybody into a meeting. This is just a few weeks after that meeting, the holiday meeting. Called everybody into a staff meeting. We said, look, we made a decision, folks. In exchange for you giving us 100% this year, we're not going to cut funding of any benefits for the entire year. And we're not going to lay off a single person for any profit and loss reason. We lost a ton of money that year, but we kept that promise. At the end of the year, staff surprised us at the holiday meeting with these awards, which meant a lot.
We were confident that we got 100% out of our team that year. And even better, Jeff and I passed a major business test in surviving 2009. Since then, we've grown steadily every year since. We also founded 2 other profitable, successful companies, QualifiedCarriers.com and QualifiedMarineTerminals.com. And also during that time, we became ISO certified. Does anybody know what ISO certification is? A show of hands. Yeah, it's a bitch, ain't it? But it's made us a better company.
Jim is president and COO of the company. He oversees the carrier side of the business, and I'm glad he does it because he's good at it. Credit and collections, accounting, they report into him. I know when I travel and see customers, market the company, and do the good work I try to do here for TIA, that the office is being run well.
Jeff is CEO. He's the customer-facing voice of Tucker. He's in charge of sales and marketing and the continual repositioning and rebranding of the company in the marketplace. Travels often, enjoys speaking, writing, and presenting, and I'm glad he does all those things so that I don't have to, and he's good at it. When it comes to accepting speaking engagements, however, Jeff's no button is broken. You guys on the board know what I'm talking about. Even when the invitation comes at the worst possible time in our company's history. But I'm going to let Jeff explain that.
Thanks, Jim. Next week, we're moving our 19 years headquarters to this building here. And it's a larger space and very exciting, but behind the stage here, I was texting instructions. I'm sure more questions are waiting for me after we get off of this stage. Jim was not a happy camper when I told him we'd be here today. A few weeks later, we're going through some operational change, some pretty big operational change that we're prepared for, but change is always, transition is always. So in the end, we're the lucky ones, Jim and I. We're the 10%. How do you get there? 3 things. 1, you gotta want it. 2, you've got to have a solid transition plan. And 3, you've got to communicate. You've got to have excellent communications. Consider therapy. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, have grievance sessions. Closed door grievance sessions. Whatever you do, it's imperative that you have great communications. So transitioning the ownership of a family business can be pure and unadulterated hell. But it can be done, and we are living proof. I'm Jeff Tucker.
I'm Jim Tucker.
And we are
TIA.